Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the Marvel Legends Sleepwalker, part of the Rintra Build-A-Figure wave. Now for this guy, we actually see something kind of interesting. He has a lot of the oldest parts we see in circulation at this point, but also kind of a lot of new parts. And that's a good thing. There's some really nice stuff going on with this figure. There is one sort of glaring issue, but maybe the good stuff makes up for it. So let's go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. And this guy stands just about 6 5/8 inches tall, which makes him pretty close to, let's say, just shy of 17 centimeters. It's basically your standard Bucky cap body with a couple of new parts here and there. So you get the scaling. It's going to fit in with most Marvel Legends just fine because it is most Marvel Legends, just with a few new parts. Alright, now question of the day. Are you familiar with this character, and are you satisfied with this interpretation of it? I was not familiar with the character, and unfortunately I decided to do some research and look into the character a little bit, and I have to say that diminished my desire to own this, because the character design is so much better than what we see here in the figure. The blue, we're going to jump right into the aesthetic. This main blue typically is drawn to be a little bit brighter. This very dark blue doesn't really play that well with the dark purple. It just kind of blends into nothingness, whereas the lighter blue that we typically see looks much nicer up against that purple, gives the character much more pop. So that is a bit of a bummer for me. It's kind of like with the AOA Cyclops where they got the colors wrong. It does detract from the figure. Technically this blue and purple go together fine, but that's just not what he's supposed to look like. Now the other thing that bothers me about him is he's on the standard Bucky cap body, but he's really not shaped like that. Ever in the drawings. He's either really exaggerated or just very heroic. He has the very superhero, let's say comic book character design. Like narrow waist, big shoulders, big chest. Like he's very exaggerated, even if he's not like lanky and like dream world or whatever it's called exaggerated. He's still very not standard guy shaped, and this is, though very muscular, very well defined, it's just your average build for a Marvel Legends figure. He looks like almost every other character, so that is a bit of a bummer to me. Now there are two really good things about this figure. Despite the torso being fairly shiny, a lot of him is actually very matte, and it looks fantastic. The green parts in particular, very nice finish on there. It looks really good. It makes the sculpt look so much better when it's not all shiny. The legs are actually fairly matte as well. Then the other really cool thing is that they added these parts, the wrist wraps, the belt, the thigh thing, the boots. I do wish they did the whole leg in the wraps like it should be most of the time, but it still looks really nice. Downside is there's no paint anywhere on this figure other than the face. Like actually none. So it looks very cheap as a result. The matte finish is good, but not having any paint still detracts a lot. I do believe this is, well, maybe this isn't a new cape. Was this also used for like Hobgoblin or somebody? I don't remember. Either way, the cape is fine. It doesn't sit right again. It sits better than most, but it still is not quite right. The head sculpt is pretty good, I'll give him that, and we do get a little bit of paint on there, but I don't think it does enough to bring the character to life. It's good, but it's not particularly good. Doesn't really make the sculpt that is very nice look as good as it should. So, despite the really good things that are hidden throughout this figure, it's riddled with things that it shouldn't have, like no paint and just lazy implementation, really, of the character design. So I'm going to give it an aesthetic rating of only 7 out of 10. It could have been a lot better. There are really good things, but there are things that aren't so good as well. Now, as far as the accessories go, we only get one set of alternate hands. We have the 2 fist hands that come out in the package, and then we get 2 kind of relaxed hands. And they're nice enough sculpted hands, but almost everything I saw of him gave him either claws poking out of his gloves or just pointy fingers. These just look like regular person hands. They'll do, but they are not particularly reminiscent of the character design. So again, lazy implementation. So 3 out of 10 for the accessories. Also, not having a face with any sort of look on it. I think an alternate head would have really suited this guy well, because it just, he looks asleep. Like he's not Sleepwalker, he is sleepwalking. He's very bored to be here, and that's how I feel owning the figure. Pretty disappointing there. Now, as far as the articulation goes, it's going to come to nobody's surprise that it's the same as almost every other Bucky cap. The head does have the standard hinge and ball peg, but because of the collar and the hood, you're not going to get much going on there. Just basically your rotation. Shoulders are standard. Just about horizontal, full rotation. Bicep swivel is fine. Double jointed elbow is okay. You do get a wrist swivel and hinge. Ab crunch on this version of Bucky cap does go back nicely, though it has a giant gap in it, which is terrible. There's no reason for that at all. That needs to not be like that. That's just not good. That's not acceptable. There's no reason for it. I can't believe this is a thing that is still happening to this day. It does lean forward nicely though, like it is a functional joint, but there's no reason for that gap. Waist twist is fine. The belt is a floaty belt, so you can hide that seam if you want to. Hips do kick up forward nicely. They go back a good touch, and then they go all the way out to the side. These are probably the best hips we have right now. They don't stick out a whole bunch. There's not a huge thigh gap, and they're super functional, so I like that. Thigh swivel is fine. Double jointed knee is fine. We do still get a shin swivel, and the foot goes all the way back and all the way forward, and you get a really good ankle rocker. Lower legs are still way too long for the upper legs. Let me give you guys a quick thing. Like, this is an aesthetic thing, but I'm going to talk about it right now before I do the articulation rating, just because we're talking about the legs. A good rule of thumb is if you want to go from the hip down to the bottom of the foot, the knee should be the halfway point. Because this part right here should be about 80% of this part. So if you include the foot, from the knee down should equal, including the foot, from the knee up, just the femur, from the knee to the hip. So this should be the same size as all of this, and it's not even close. So that's a bummer. Okay, so on to the articulation rating. It's not bad. It's fine. For Marvel Legends, it's pretty good. The hips are nice. It's ugly here, but I'll give it an 8. For Marvel Legends, this one gets an 8. Doesn't have anything special, but what is there does function well enough, so that is okay. Yeah, it's alright. I still don't like the way they do hoods. I'm going to just talk about that again because it's either hanging down straight, which would make sense, and then floating up here, or you can kind of wedge it down so that it sits right here, but then it sticks out backwards a little bit. So it's like, just pick one. But anyway, it's a strong-ish release. They're so close to something great here, but like, how about a wash on all these parts with all this texture, all these wraps that are sculpted? It just disappears because it's just solid molded plastic, looks like a dollar store toy. Really, like, so much effort, so much mold tooling to go into making something like this, and then it's just shat upon by not finishing through, not following through. Put a wash on it. A wash on the cape, a wash on all the purple parts. That would have sold the figure. You could have even just left the blue and green alone. But no, they did nothing, so it's just a bunch of molded plastic. Looks cheap as hell, despite the nice sculpt work and probably a decent chunk of money that went into producing this figure. Very strange. All of it put together, like, the good stuff is really good, the bad stuff really shouldn't be there. I'm going to average it out to a 7 out of 10 for the final verdict. I wanted to like this figure so much more. They just didn't earn it. They have to earn it, guys. We're paying them to make these figures. We're buying these things. We don't need them. They have to earn the money, and I don't feel like it was earned with this. It was almost there, but then they shot themselves in the foot. So, pretty disappointing. You guys can let me know how you feel about all of that stuff in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I do have over 4,000 videos always just sitting there on the channel. They're always there. But I do have new videos almost every single day too. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.